For decades, the mystery of the Somerton man has baffled the state. Found slumped on the foreshore of an Adelaide beach in 1948, his identity has eluded police.
But now, a potential breakthrough. A local researcher claims he's solved the puzzle and can finally put a name to the face.
On the morning of December 1st, 1948, a man was found dead on a beach in Adelaide, Australia. He was leaning casually against a seawall, legs stretched out, one arm resting beside him, as if he had simply fallen asleep in the sun. He had no wallet, no identification. Every single label had been carefully cut out of his clothing, every tag, every maker's mark deliberately removed. No one came forward to identify him. No missing person report matched his description. His fingerprints matched no record on file anywhere in the world. Dental records matched nothing. For weeks, then months, then years, this man remained completely, impossibly anonymous. Then, months later, investigators found something hidden in a tiny pocket sewn inside the waistband of his trousers. A pocket so small it had been missed during the initial examination. Inside was a tightly rolled scrap of paper with two printed words, Tamám Shud, Persian for finished or ended. The phrase was traced to the final page of a rare book of poetry. And tucked into the back of that exact book, police found something even stranger. A series of handwritten letters arranged in 5 short lines that looked like a code. That code has never been definitively solved. For 73 years, this man had no name. This is the story of the Somerton man, one of the strangest, most layered unsolved mysteries in modern history. Section 1. A body on Somerton Beach. Let's set the scene properly. Somerton Park is a quiet seaside suburb of Adelaide, South Australia. On the evening of November 30th, 1948, several witnesses noticed a well-dressed man sitting on the sand near the seawall, his posture upright, almost relaxed, watching the water. One witness later recalled seeing him raise his arm in what looked like an attempt to smoke, though the arm dropped before completing the motion, a detail that would later take on real significance. The next morning, December 1st, another beachgoer noticed the same man still in the same position. Assuming he was simply asleep, they left him undisturbed. It wasn't until later that morning that someone realized something was deeply wrong. The man had not moved at all, and he was dead. Police arrived to find a man who appeared to be in his early to mid-40s, fit, athletic build, around 5'11", with gray-streaked hair and unusually muscular calves. A detail forensic examiners specifically noted, suggesting he may have been an athlete, possibly a dancer, or someone who walked or ran extensively as part of his profession or lifestyle. He was impeccably dressed, a suit, tie, and polished shoes. But here is where things immediately turned strange. Every single tag, label, and maker's mark had been meticulously removed from every piece of his clothing. Even the manufacturer's stamp had been carefully scratched off the inside of one trouser pocket. There was no wallet, no identification of any kind, no keys, almost nothing, in fact, that any ordinary traveler would carry. Just a half-finished pack of chewing gum, a box of matches, a comb, and 2 types of cigarettes, oddly mismatched with the cigarette packet they were found inside. Section 2. The cause of death. The autopsy deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. The pathologist found that the man's spleen was significantly enlarged, roughly 3 times its normal size, and his liver was severely congested with blood. These findings were consistent with poisoning, yet no specific poison could be conclusively identified through 1940s-era toxicology methods. There were no obvious external injuries, no signs of a struggle, and critically, no indication of how a poison might have been administered. Investigators considered digitalis, strychnine, and several other rare poisons, but testing returned inconclusive or negative results across the board. The pathologist who examined the body stated, in terms unusually direct for an official medical report, that he was quite certain The death was not natural and strongly suspected poisoning, despite being unable to scientifically prove which substance was responsible. This created an immediate, frustrating roadblock for investigators. A body that screamed murder, with no identifiable weapon. Police searched extensively for any matching missing persons report, not just locally, but across Australia, and eventually internationally. They circulated his photograph, his fingerprints, and a detailed physical description to police departments and Interpol-affiliated agencies in multiple countries. Absolutely nothing matched. No family came forward. No employer reported him missing. It was as though this man had simply never officially existed. Section 3. Tamám Shud and the Mysterious Code. With the body unidentified and the trail going cold, police made the decision to publicly release a plaster cast of the man's face and bust, hoping someone somewhere would recognize him. Then, in January 1949, more than a month after the body was found, a critical discovery was made. A tiny, almost invisible pocket sewn inside the waistband of the man's trousers, easily overlooked during the original examination, was found to contain a tightly rolled scrap of paper. On it were printed two words, Tamám Shud. Investigators determined the phrase came from the final line of a collection of Persian poetry, where it translates roughly to, "It is ended," or finished. This particular printed phrase had been physically torn from a specific page of a specific printing of the book, meaning somewhere there existed an actual physical copy of that exact book missing that exact page. Police launched a public appeal, and remarkably, a local man came forward. He explained that he had found a copy of that same book months earlier, apparently discarded in the backseat of his unlocked car, parked near the very beach where the body was found. He had never thought much of it until hearing about the case. When investigators examined this book, they found something extraordinary on the back inside cover. A series of capital letters, written in pencil, arranged across 5 short lines, clearly not forming any recognizable word or sentence in English. It appeared to be some kind of code or cipher. Military and intelligence codebreakers, including cryptographers connected to Australian naval intelligence, examined the code extensively. To this day, over 70 years later, it has never been definitively, conclusively solved. Some experts believe it may be a genuine cipher, possibly connected to espionage. Others believe it may simply be the initial letters of words from a memorized poem or set of phrases, a memory aid rather than a secret message. No one has produced a solution that the wider expert community universally accepts. The book also contained a faint, partially erased phone number written in pencil, which led investigators to a woman living in the same Adelaide suburb. Her name was Jeston, a stage name used by a young nurse named Jessica Thompson. Section 4. The Woman in the Code. When police visited Jessica Thompson and showed her the plaster cast of the dead man's face, witnesses described her reaction as one of visible shock. She reportedly appeared as though she might faint, yet she firmly denied knowing the man and denied any connection to him or to the phone number found in the book. Investigators found her reaction deeply suspicious, but without further evidence, they could not press the matter. Jessica Thompson went on to live the rest of her life without ever publicly clarifying her connection to the case, and she died in 2007. Decades later, her daughter, Kate Thompson, came forward with a series of startling claims. Kate stated that her mother had, in fact, known the identity of the Somerton man all along, but had deliberately kept it secret for the rest of her life, allegedly out of fear connected to intelligence or government matters. Kate also suggested that her mother may have had a connection to Australian or Allied intelligence work during this era, the late 1940s, a period of intense early Cold War espionage activity across Allied nations. Kate further claimed her mother had a unique, distinctive ear shape, a rare genetic trait, and noted that Kate's own son was born with that same unusual ear formation. a trait Kate believed he may have inherited paternally from the Somerton man himself, suggesting a deeper, more direct biological connection between her mother and the mystery man than was ever publicly admitted. This entire subplot fueled decades of speculation that the Somerton man may have been a spy, perhaps a Soviet operative, perhaps a Western intelligence asset operating during a period when Cold War tensions, atomic secrets, and espionage activity were intensifying rapidly across the Pacific region. Adelaide, notably, was home to sensitive weapons testing facilities during this exact period, adding further fuel to espionage theories. Section 5. 74 years later. A name at last. For decades, the Somerton man's body remained in a cemetery in Adelaide, his grave simply marked, his identity a permanent blank. In 2021, with the permission of South Australian authorities, his body was exhumed specifically so that modern forensic scientists could attempt to extract usable DNA, technology that simply did not exist in 1948. A genetic genealogist named Derek Abbott, who had been independently obsessed with this case for years, partnered with researchers to analyze the extracted genetic material and compare it against modern, publicly available genealogy databases, employing essentially the same revolutionary technique that had cracked other infamous cold cases in recent years. In July 2022, after more than 7 decades of complete anonymity, researchers announced they had identified the Somerton man. His name was Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer born in Melbourne in 1905. He had been previously married, but his wife had divorced him years before his death, and he had become increasingly estranged from his family in the years leading up to 1948, which may explain why no one had ever come forward to identify him. This identification, while a genuine breakthrough, did not fully close the case. It answered the most basic question: who was he? But left almost everything else unresolved. Why was he in Adelaide? Why were all his clothing labels removed? What was the actual cause and method of his death? Was he poisoned? And if so, by whom? And why? What is the actual meaning of the still unsolved code? And was Jessica Thompson truly connected to him? And if so, how? Authorities have stated that while Webb's identity has been confirmed through DNA analysis, the official cause and circumstances of his death remain formally unresolved, and South Australian police have indicated the case technically remains open. Section 6. What we still don't know. Even with a name finally attached to this case after 74 years, the Somerton man remains one of the most genuinely layered, unsolved mysteries in modern history. Because identifying a body is not the same as understanding what happened to it. We still do not know why every label was removed from his clothing, an act of such careful deliberation that it strongly suggests either the man himself or whoever was with him did not want him identified. We still do not know what poison, if any, was used or how it was administered without leaving obvious physical evidence. We still do not know the true meaning of the code in the back of that book of poetry, a code that professional cryptographers and amateur enthusiasts alike have failed to crack for over 70 years. And we still do not know the true nature of his connection to Jessica Thompson, a woman who reportedly recognized him instantly, denied it for the rest of her natural life, and whose own daughter believes she carried this secret to her grave. Carl Webb finally has a name, but the manner and meaning of his death remain locked behind a mystery that science alone has not yet been able to fully unlock. Somewhere between a quiet evening on an Australian beach and a phrase that means it is ended, a man's entire identity was erased so completely that it took the modern science of DNA genealogy 3/4 of a century later just to give him his name back. Carl Webb sat on that beach as the sun went down, and within hours, he was gone, leaving behind nothing but an unsolvable code, a torn page of poetry, and a woman who may have known exactly who he was and never said a word. So tell me what you think. Was Carl Webb a spy caught up in early Cold War intrigue? Was his death a personal matter that simply spiraled into something stranger than anyone expected? And do you think that code will ever truly be solved? Drop your theory in the comments below. I read every single one. If you love unraveling mysteries like this one, make sure you're subscribed to Eternal Secrets HQ, because we are just getting started uncovering the stories the world has never fully explained. Stay curious, stay questioning. I'll see you in the next one.